This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today is Friday, it's September 8th, 2023. Thank you for joining us here on thetruthcentral.com. And we are doing podcasts every weekday. We'll be expanding the show. We'll be expanding into a Substack soon. And we are very pleased to have you join us. Please, if you like the show, support our sponsors, like the show, retweet it, share it, etc., so we expand the audience. First story today. Peter Navarro, who is one of the top consultants to Donald Trump, I've met him. He is a great gentleman. He was convicted yesterday of contempt of Congress for defying the January 6th Select Committee. Now, again, what this means is he'll undoubtedly appeal this. It's a criminal conviction. And it was unanimous by it was a contempt of Congress charges for defying a subpoena. And the jury returned the unanimous conviction Thursday after a 4-hour deliberation, followed a 2-day trial featuring testimony from 3 former January 6th committee staffers. And each count carries a 1-year maximum sentence. And Navarro is going to appeal the verdict. Now, what the prosecutors are saying that this was his brazen attempt to defy the Select Committee, Congressional Select Committee, basically Democratic henchmen going after Trump, to accuse that Trump was engaged in insurrection to question the outcome of the 2020 election. This is one of the major attacks on Trump to make sure Trump does not get to run for president in 2024. This is a lawfare using the law to defeat the law to achieve political purposes, which is not what the law is designed to do. None of it is legitimately utilized. And Navarro, and I think, comes out ahead here because he's now going to get a forum on the appeal to make his case that this is the intolerant Democrats who do not want a First Amendment. And they are arbitrarily, in a one-sided approach, applying the law to punish Donald Trump, where they would excuse Biden of everything, including obvious corruption. So the Department of Justice has become weaponized politically. This is absolutely in violation of everything America. We're designed here to be justice that is not political. We're going into the direction of becoming a banana republic very, very fast. And I'm arguing this is intentional because the neo-Marxists who are now in control of the Democratic Party and the media and the agencies of the government are determined to destroy the country in order to defeat God, erase God, and establish neo-Marxism and cultural Maoism. We're going through a cultural Maoist revolution in which they are demanding that people comply, take a knee to their woke agenda. The woke agenda is that everything is racist, that America is evil, that we need to imagine this future, which we're not racist, and we need to, imagine where we don't have police, imagine where we don't have boundaries, imagine where we don't have John Lennon would be a good idea as far as I'm concerned, because these people are that detached from reality. Now, what Navarro is going to do, Navarro is going to come and say, this is a First Amendment issue, and I'm not going to go before a Stalin, show trial, which is going to accuse me of insurrection, which they've done, and now put me in prison for insurrection. They won't cooperate with their agenda. This is a very, very important case, and it's going along with the attempt to get Donald Trump in front of the Supreme Court, which I'm sure this leftist lawfare radical group will do, arguing that on the 14th Amendment, which was a Civil War amendment, there is a clause written that anyone who is convicted of insurrection, remember the Civil War was a rebellion, The South seceded, pulled itself out of the Union. And this was, again, the Civil War was fought over states' rights, whether they had a right to do that or whether they were still part of the Union. And Abraham Lincoln refused to accept the legitimacy of secession. They couldn't just secede and form their new nation. He said at that time, once the contract was made, it's like marriage. At that time, Lincoln was saying you can't just divorce. Well, today, divorce is rampant. People think they can break contracts. I mean, this is a fundamentally different moral era. And so therefore, this law, which says, the 14th Amendment, that if you were convicted of rebelling against the United States government, if you were a traitor who went to war against the country, you could not hold federal office. And they're saying we're going to convict Trump of insurrection. That's what the case in Georgia is about. Therefore, he will be disqualified from running for president. Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. Number two, even convicted criminals can run for president under this Espionage Act, which is another one of the charges that they've brought against Donald Trump in federal court. This Jack Smith, the special counsel, that they are saying essentially that, like Eugene Debs in World War I, who was convicted of giving an anti-war speech against the First World War in Dayton, Ohio, and they said his speech was an insurrectionist speech, urging people not to go to war, not to fight, not to be in the draft, not to go into the army, even if they were drafted into the army. So they put him in prison. He ran for president, and he got over 1 million votes. Donald Trump could be president from prison. There's nothing to prevent that in the Constitution. So they're going to have a hard time with this case. But again, you don't know which way the Supreme Court is going to go, because we have on the Supreme Court now a woman who can't tell you what a woman is. And these woke people are not interested in the Constitution at all. They think it should be eliminated. So who knows how they'll decide. They'll again have political justice. We're at a very, very dangerous point in our country, because if we do not have a standard of law which is impartial and applied equally without regard to politics, the attempt by the left will be to destroy, imprison, demonize anyone who dares profess God or oppose their agenda. Let's go to the second story. I have quite a lot to cover today. And please do look at our sponsors. Our next subjects I'm going to talk about are going to show you that basically we are in a desperate situation in which the solvency of the country is not assured any longer. But secondly, I want to go to the story about Musk. So please look at our sponsors, My Vital C. People are saying I look younger. Take a look at it. This is a miracle molecule, carbon-60. And we have a book out, which is now available on the website and on Amazon. We've written this to go together with the website, which is coming on, which is getlongevitymeds.com. And the book, which is now available, Live Longer and Better. It's written with Chris Burries and Jerome Corsi. It is all about carbon-60. It's not a terribly long book, but it's a very important book for you to read. And we'll be doing much more on that. Okay, now the second story about Musk is extremely important, because what Musk is saying is that in the Ukrainian war, he came to a decision. The Ukrainians wanted to use this, one of his sites. Remember, Musk he's a philanthropic billionaire. He's created the SpaceX, which is putting rockets into space, and this Starlink, which is designed really to put universal through his satellite system, broadcasting of Netflix, etc., to make the internet work better. And Ukraine wanted to use his Starlink system in order to do GPS targeting of the Russian fleet in the Black Sea, with an intent to attack that fleet. And with the Starlink precision of being able to determine GPS locations Ukraine intended to have a Pearl Harbor against Russia's Navy in the Black Sea. Musk said no. He refused to allow the Ukraine to do this. This is now coming out in a new book about Musk. And Musk realized at that point he was going to be accused of undermining Ukraine's military strategy, which was also NATO's military strategy, which is also the Pentagon's military strategy. But Musk said they can't use the system because Musk was worried that Russia, if they suffered a Pearl Harbor with their fleet in the Black Sea, would consider that to be requiring a retaliation, and we could have a nuclear war within 20 minutes. Now, I'm very concerned about this issue because if NATO decides that they're going to win this war and escalate weapons, we're sending Abrams tanks to Ukraine, we're sending F-16s to Ukraine, we start sending the advanced weaponry we have together with GPS systems, this could become World War III. And I think we are at the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was in 1962, we're at the first time, I think, at the precipice of international nuclear war. And it's frightening, but I want everybody to be aware that it's happening. Okay, Chris, you want to comment on this much so far?
It's interesting you bring up that we're on the precipice of nuclear war. All things considered, we're depleting our military supplies, and Russia might be depleting its own and manpower in this whole proxy war in Ukraine. Thinking about that, what do we have left to fight with? How great are our defenses and our military forces now if, and Biden said this in public, we're low on munitions? It's out there. I'm not giving any secrets out there. The man said it in public. We're low on munitions. I can only assume that Russia's having its troubles as well. We're not going to be able to fight each other toe to toe. Nuclear war is probably the way they'll be going. And that's not good.
I think that's right. And I think that neither our military today could better run a transgender parade down Fifth Avenue than they could fight a war. And, I think this is woke military. We're destroying every institution that we relied upon since the foundation of the Republic, including churches not preaching liberation theology, which is Marxism. Every one of these institutions, marriage, God, family, these are under attack, and under successful attack, where the popular culture is that there is no God. There is no sky entity that's going to come in and intervene and save everything. Well, this is a fundamental demonic idea. And if we want to, follow Satan and take a bite of the apple, so we are God, that's a suicidal idea. But in fact, these people are suicidal. They hate humanity.
Funny thing, I'll even say push Satan aside, because these people want you to worship the state. They want you to worship the people, the men in power, if you will. If you worship Satan, that's still another deity to them. They want you to worship them. Well, if it's a branch of Satan, that works. But the idea is, Marxists want you to worship man, wants you to worship the state as if it was God.
Well, that's the devil's primary theme. In other words, the devil's theme is you are God.
Incognito.
Yeah. And the devil doesn't care whether you believe in him or not, but he wants you to believe in the idea he's giving you, which is that you are God, and you don't need God. You can't see God, so you are God. And as long as people get that idea in their mind, they've followed the Satan, whether they know it or not. They don't have to believe in Satan. They've just internalized his message. That's the point.
There you go.
Now, let's go to the next story, because there's this great enthusiasm about China, and China is forming this BRICS nations, and the BRICS nations are now expanding. It was originally Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They're adding, importantly, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, which are three of the top oil-producing countries in the world. Now, the news here is that China is under extreme economic pressure. they have a lot of real estate problems. There's 80 million unoccupied houses in China. It's a huge number for a giant company when real estate has been driving China's growth. And now it's in danger of wrecking it. Because what China did is they even built cities that no one lives in. They just kept building because as long as they poured money into building, they were stimulating the economy, whether those units were ever occupied or not. But now the problem is the financing of those units are coming due, and there's no revenue from them. So the companies that were involved here are going bankrupt. Now, there's also another problem if China is going to say they're going to have a gold-backed reserve currency with the BRICS nations that's going to replace the dollar. It is a de-dollarization movement. It is a direct challenge to the dollar. The dollar is being dramatically weakened and also purposely destroyed intentionally by just printing money. So the people who are doing this under the modern monetary theory that we've got fiat currency, so therefore we can print as much as we want because to pay off the debt, we'll just print more money. And since it's really a sovereign debt, as long as we print the money and put the name of the United States on it, that's good, except that the dollar's become worth less and less and less. The dollar since 1971 has devalued 100%. We went off the gold standard. So I'm imploring you to talk with Swiss America, one of our major sponsors, perhaps our major sponsor at this point. And if you want a free copy of the book, we now have the correct number up there, the 800 number. You can talk to Swiss America, and they'll send you a free copy of the book. And it's this book right here. And again, it's not a huge book, but it's an important book. It won't take long to read, but if you want to understand the financial crisis and why gold is going to double, just call Swiss America and have them send you a copy of this book. Swiss America will be happy to do it. The number is right there. Chris is highlighting it, and we're going to make sure you see this number. I definitely implore you to get a copy of the book. It's free, and read it. You'll be prepared to understand what we're talking about here and why it's so urgent. Now, the other problem with China is that China is controlled entirely by the Communist Party. And China's had a habit of not respecting its obligations. Okay, so that this chairman Xi, he doesn't really understand how markets work. Why would anybody invest in a stock market that is constantly at the mercy of the Communist Party's subjective whims and predilections? So according to China's new anti-sanctions law, just about anything can be a crime. It's what we're headed in the United States. And one's assets can be seized if the Communist Party leaders want them to be. The raid on the Shanghai headquarters of Bain and Company and the colonization, which was the seizure of the Hong Kong Financial Center by China's imperialists, has had the effect, from a strictly financial point of view, of emptying the Chinese market of all reliability. If you can't count on the market to be stable, why invest in it? China can simply take over Hong Kong and say, we don't care about the agreements. We don't care that we're going to imprison everybody who wanted to be tied to the West. We're the Communist Party. We'll do what we want. Well, that's fine. You can do that, but don't expect anybody to invest in you, because at a moment you could confiscate everybody's investment. And Xi has already told his military to prepare for war and to fight to win. He's flown spy balloons over the United States. He's poised to attack Taiwan. And the Biden administration is highly, highly compromised by its bribery ties to China through Hunter Biden. What's Biden going to do if China invades Taiwan? And China knows everything there is to know about Hunter Biden, and I guarantee you it will be in the news. So we are in a desperate situation here, but so is China. And I think the world is headed towards a massive collapse with fiat currencies, too much debt. These are not stable situations. Now, if you'll notice very closely, you see also a lot of material coming out about Obama being gay. So Larry Sinclair was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, We've had a increasing number of revelations today. It's breaking about how many of the homosexuals who were tied to this Trinity Church were Obama, Reverend Wright, if anybody remembers Reverend Wright, who at that time was saying GD America, and Sean Hannity during the 2008 campaign was making a big deal of it. I wrote my book, The Obama Nation, which was the #1 New York Times bestseller, and I exposed that Obama was a communist trained by Frank Marshall Davis, and who was a communist from Chicago, who knew Obama's parents and moved to Hawaii, where Obama and his grandparents were, and they raised him. And Obama as a communist, okay, why is all this coming out right now? They're basically preparing the field for Michelle's candidacy. Now, what was hidden in 2008 was that Obama's a homosexual, and the relationship between Obama and Michelle is at least mysterious. And the parentage of the two children has been questioned. Now, none of this was going to be in the mainstream media, but Obama is going to release the material in advance because he knows this is going to become an issue. So there must be some issues about Michelle that they don't want explored, because they've done all this imaging repositioning like they did with Obama. You know, he introduced John Kerry in the 2004 Democratic National Convention. Obama then was positioned to run in 2008. Well, Michelle introduced Joe Biden in the 2000 Democratic National Committee, positioning. She's written 2 books. Obama had written 2 books. They're following the same public relations campaign to say that Michelle is softening. She's not the hard Marxist wanting to destroy America. She's not the GD America of Reverend Wright. Well, they know she is. They know at her heart what she's written in her doctoral thesis at Princeton. They know there's vulnerabilities here. And again, and Tucker Carlson made this clear, that the Obama campaign in 2004 told press, if you report this, you'll no longer have access to our campaign, which is about death for any one of the major media. So they are coerced into reporting only positive information. A lot's going on right now. And I think it's going to mean that in October, we're going to see probably crashes of markets. And before long, they're going to move Joe Biden aside and Michelle is going to be advanced, probably at the last moment, so she does not have to go through the primaries. They don't want that potential embarrassment if she should lose primaries. Of course, the Democrats also don't have any other candidate. Now, I want to cover a couple stories on where this woke mob is going. McDonald's is now coming under fire. They've been running ads with 2 homosexual guys talking about McDonald's. And so therefore, they're joining the same campaign that's now being targeted against Bud Light and Target for running woke commercials. Okay, this is again another deep issue, because you've got the Supreme Court who's already ruled against using affirmative action in college and university admissions. And some of the organizations that are forming to contest in the courts this woke agenda. Okay, so after the Supreme Court election ruled against affirmative action in universities and colleges, this organization, which is called Strive, which is, I believe, tied to this Republican candidate who's Vivek Ramaswamy, who co-founded the anti-woke Strive Asset Management. And Strive Asset Management bought $2 million of McDonald's shares to rally shareholder support to end the race and gender quota system the McDonald's franchise instituted for board members and employee hiring. So they're going after, this is also going to promote this Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign to be vice president, which is what he wants. And Trump is taking a look at it. And this movement, if we can, if they basically take down Bud Light, which has lost billions of dollars for doing that stupid woke commercial with the transgender commercial, or Target. They can add McDonald's to the list. Corporate America is going to pay attention. And this ESG investing, which is backed by BlackRock, who is one of the biggest, investment managers, trillions of dollars under management, does not want to take the losses. They'll back away from ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, which is again vulnerable to court cases because anybody who's got a pension fund, an IRA, 401k, mutual funds, that are ESG investing is probably taking a loss because you're investing for social purposes, political purposes, rather than investment returns. And the ERISA laws demand that advisors do the best for the client in terms of economic return, not political ESG investing, which sets up an essentially great basis for lawsuits that will gain billions of dollars for class action suits against BlackRock and the other investment advisors of ERISA funds. Okay, so there is pushback, and they're not. This woke agenda is not simply going to win the day because they control all the media and the agencies, but this is going to be the closest we've come in the United States to a divided country that has no basis for reconciliation. Okay, a couple more stories. There is a movement here on this 15-minute cities, smart cities, very similar to the 15-minute cities. These are no longer theoretical because the infrastructure is already in place around the globe and plans in the works to move us into them. Now, what is a 15-minute city? It's a city where there are three types of places where people live in Western society. If you're off the grid, you're safe from this for now. Most people will be packed into small geographical areas, and these small metropolitan areas will be divided into multiple districts that are self-contained. And if you go outside your district, your technology won't work. And you won't be able to have any digital currency, you won't be able to buy anything, you won't have the mark of the beast, you'll be disconnected. This is as close to end times book of Revelation as I've seen. Now, the smart city, the urban smart cities will be located near, we'll have farm versions of it, mining versions of it, where again, these are off-site areas which will contain the workers who are there. And then there will be other areas so that the Silicon Valley elite have destroyed San Francisco with their leftist ideology. And if you take a look at what's happening in San Francisco with businesses shutting down, Rodeo Drive is essentially now a ghost town. The trendy shops are not going to stay in business when smash and grab, the police have to stand down. There's millions of dollars being robbed. And our cities are descending into democratic hellholes. Mayor of New York's complaining that with all the illegal immigrants being dumped into New York City's not sustainable any longer. It's going to deteriorate very rapidly. Cities are not safe. And when stores close, that means corporations downsize. We're headed into a massive collapse of the economy, and it is intentional. The people organizing this and in control know what they're doing. Federal Reserve knows increasing rates will essentially throw us into a very deep recession. The Fed's already announced they're going to continue increasing rates. Because if they don't, they can't control inflation. Printing this much money, there's no alternative. Now, living in one of these 15-minute cities is designed to be communist, Chinese, totalitarian control. And these devices we have, the cell phones and all the like, which are so convenient, will soon become our way of becoming imprisoned. Chris, any comment on this?
I know the article says they're trying to get everybody to live in those 15-minute cities. How are they going to pull that off? Who's going to live in the suburban and urban areas? Are they going to be 15-minute cities as well? Seriously? What they're going to do is take the urban areas, the blue bubbles as they are, and create smaller blue bubbles so people don't have to interact outside of them and vote the way they want. This way, you kind of control what was once known as a free society. People won't have the right to assemble or won't bother assembling, and that's another thing. They're dumbing down the country produces lazier people, people who won't want to travel 15 minutes outside of their area, won't want to start their car and park the car or anything else, or even go to work far away, 20 minutes to an hour away from their place. That's it'll be people trading convenience for their freedom, and the almighty state being able to control everybody. Let's say with little governorships for every 15-minute city. It'll be a lot easier for them to control us if we can't. Again, even despite the internet, it'll be a lot easier to control other people if they can't meet people outside those little bubbles face to face very often.
I agree with you. Look, I'm encouraging people to read. Here's some books you ought to be aware of, and I'm reading these books, and this is one by Judith Curry, and she was is a very prominent climate scientist. It's called Climate Uncertainty and Risk, Rethinking Our Response. Okay, this is a very controversial book because in it, what Judith Curry says is that the climate science is nonsense. And she backed away from the movement when she saw the ClimateGate emails. And what she said with the ClimateGate emails were when this, what's his name, created this hockey stick. Michael Mann created this hockey stick graph, which said that all through Earth's history, the temperature was perfectly fine, copacetic. Then we began to get to the industrial age. We began to use hydrocarbon fuels, which emit carbon dioxide. And suddenly the Earth heated up like the blade of the hockey stick. It just shot straight up. It's nonsense. They rigged the data. Judith Curry knew it. Judith Curry is writing books to say that the climate models are designed to predict economic and climate disaster, and they don't work because the mathematics of the climate are nonlinear. That's the hockey stick right there. And Michael Mann's nonsense. It erased the medieval warming period. It erased the little ice age, the 1700s and the 1800s. Another book I'm really encouraging you to read. This is Matthias Desmet. I think it's a very important book. It's called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And it's short. But what it does is it explains how the left is really totalitarian. And it is extremely good. He goes to people I've been writing about since I was 17 years old. Gustave Le Bon, who in 1895 was talking about what he called mass formation as a form of hypnosis, which is this idea that these delusional concepts like climate change become very popular and almost have a hypnotic effect upon people and become totalitarian, even though the ideas are completely wrong. And he says, that once you understand this, it sheds different light on the social phenomenon such as the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, the climate movements, the coronavirus crisis. They're related to real problems, but those problems are not the real reason for the existence of these phenomenon. These phenomenon arise mainly from the pressing need for the population for an authoritarian institution that provides the direction to take the burden of freedom and the associated insecurity off their shoulders. It's designed to imprison us, these ideas, and they're very effective with it. This is an indispensable book. One I've also just started reading, it's by Joe Allen, who is with Steve Bannon's War Room, Dark Aeon, and it's quite good. It's a larger book, but it's very readable. It's kind of breezy, actually. It's repetitive, but he is talking about why artificial intelligence is designed to be a war against humanity. And I'm just starting to read this book right now, but I'm very impressed with it. I'm going to read some sections of it in the show. Okay, so I'm going to cover one more story, but I also want to point out to you that I'm writing like crazy on this stuff. I was going to be retired. I announced I was going to retire after the 2020 election, and I did for a few months. But some things happened in my life that made me reevaluate. I began to see, so I'm not retired anymore. I'm back. and the Truth Central is going to be building, and I'm going to be writing. This book has done extremely well. This is one up on the website. And again, it's the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. And it's exposing climate lies in an age of disinformation. If you want to support the show, if you want to fight against these people, make this book rise in the Amazon ranks. It'll be followed by a second book. There's a trilogy. It's a Great Awakening trilogy. Second book is now in press, and it will be out in October. You can order it in advance. It's the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. It's exposing woke lies, woke insanity in the age of disinformation. And it is a sequel. First book showed the climate science lies. That's the exact same theme that Desmond's on. It shows that it's designed to indoctrinate us because we don't know climate science and we can't evaluate the mass because nobody's trained in it anymore. Judith Curry. And it's all behind artificial intelligence, which is aimed at what my third book in this series will be, which is about transhumanism. So basically where we're going, and the third book is going to look just like the first two. We're going from climate lies, which is all funded by and behind it a different worldview, neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, the cultural revolution that occurred in China, anarchy, which is what it results in, the woke ideology, and the third of these books in this series is going to be on transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and perpetual life extinction, which is where these nutcases think we can go. Okay, last story, which I think ties things together today, is on these wind farms. And I think people are not aware, we're all being told about how great the electric vehicles are and how we're all going to be able to transition to the wind farms. Well, you're not being told the reality here if you believe these things are going to work. Because what they're finding is right now is that the wind farms, the companies who are building these wind farms are going bankrupt. They don't really work. So in this offshore technology, the costs associated with the U.S. offshore wind projects have risen about 57% since 2021 because of inflation in components and labor costs, as well as rising interest rates. The economy is not supportive. We're going into an economy in which the middle class will not be able to afford to have a house, and we'll have to question whether or not they can feed the family. And it's intentional. This group in charge of the government plans to destroy America and doesn't care how many people die. They're depopulationists. They're trying to kill people. I know that's a harsh statement, but it bears out the fact that only when you understand these policies, you understand the people proposing them know they don't work. They know they destroy. And what this book shows is that the negation, which is at the heart of Marxism, negation, destruction, is all neo-Marxism or cultural Maoism is capable of creating. And it's happening. The recent cancellations of major offshore wind projects have erased billions of dollars in planned spending and put at least 9.7 additional gigawatts of offshore wind projects at risk because the companies are just pulling out. Companies have these contracts are saying, we're not going to do them if we lose money. And what the government's going to have to do now, and when we're going to go through this, we're going to go through another spending round in Congress because the government is about to shut down if it runs out of money. So we're going to have Congress, when it returns, gets active again, having another big debate. The Republicans will say, we're spending too much. The Democrats have already proposed emergency spending so that the Republicans don't fund the Ukraine war. They'll be blamed for not being able to get hurricane and other. Why the money we're sending, the new $1 billion we just sent Ukraine, why didn't we send that to Maui? Well, because the people in Maui who were burned out were the residents, long-term residents who did not want to sell that particular property to the millionaires and billionaires who wanted it for their own use. The oligarchs in San Francisco, having erected, are now buying land. They're going to create their own metropolitan area near San Francisco. Okay, the oligarchs think they can live with their machines and get rid of all the rest of us. Okay, so you've seen a number of disastrous, canceled, and abandoned offshore deals, which erased billions of US dollars in planned spending in the final weeks of July alone. Spanish utility Iberdrola SA agreed to pay $48.9 million in fines to cancel a wind power contract off the shores of Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, Danish developer Ørsted, its bid to produce offshore power was rejected due to the rising operational and development costs. So, and a plan to build a wind farm off the shore of the United Kingdom has been culled by the state-owned utility Vattenfall AB, who, you guessed it, blamed it on inflation. These three projects would have provided 3.5 gigawatts of power, more than 11% of the total offshore wind fleet currently deployed in the waters of the U.S. and Europe. But these projects are now abandoned. And the wind farms are not going to be finished. That's all going to be wind farm trash, blowing in the wind, as Bob Dylan said, blowing in the wind. Chris, any final comments?
Those of you who are viewing the show right now had seen a bunch of photos of abandoned wind turbine farms. Who cleans this stuff up? They stay there. They're pretty much huge litter sites. That's what they are. They weren't productive in the first place. They're not going to be productive in the future. What are people going to be doing? Building and building? Yes, wind might be a neat little few percent supplement to power, maybe like solar could be. But the fact is, you can't rely on it. It's impossible to rely on it, and it's basically an utter fantasy. Then again, you look back and you see these abandoned solar farms, you see these abandoned wind farms, and all these environmentalists, or at least the liberals, the people on the liberal side used to be the environmentalists. They don't seem to care. They just don't. They want to destroy the environment just to push a farther left social agenda.
Well, we've covered a lot today, and I think please like the show and get others to share it, get others to watch it, promote it, work with our sponsors. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Friday. It's September 8th, 2023. We'll be back again Monday. We're doing thetruthcentral.com podcasts every weekday. In the end, God always wins, despite how dire much of this looks. I've always believed, I wrote a book on this called, on No Greater Valor, on the Battle of Bastogne, the prayer George Patton said when he was relieving Bastogne, which was encircled by Nazi troops during the Battle of the Bulge at the end of World War II. God did intervene, the weather changed, Bastogne held out. Patton did get there and relieve the city, going a forced march through the Alps from Belgium to get to this Belgium town just in time. On Christmas Day, I think he missed it by one day. God's intervention will change everything. In the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, please join me. Let's get down on our knees. I'm going to do it, and I ask you to join me because I'm trying to, on behalf of all of us, ask God's forgiveness for taking God out of the school, for killing millions of babies in the womb, for allowing this Marxism to become controlling in our newspapers, our media, in the agencies, allowing the CIA to be conducting covert operations, which are fundamentally not what the United States should be doing, assassinating people we don't like as leaders. And I'll have a book out before the end of the year, including killing John Kennedy. This is Dr. Corsi. As long as God's in the game, as long as we support God, there's the chance of turning this around increases dramatically. And prayer, I think, at this point is essential. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back Monday. God bless.